Carolyn Chu from the LAO.
Chris Hill, Department of Finance.
Dirk Simmons, Department of Finance.
Thank you all for joining us. Someone presenting?
Present number 1.
This is issue 1. It's the 10 million.
That's right. I guess that's me.
It is.
You have all the good ones today.
Flattery will get you everywhere. Brendan Murphy, Department of
I'll
Finance.
remember that.
Oh, it will. So, Brendan Murphy, Department of Finance, what you have before you is an item for local law enforcement reimbursement related to AB 953, passed last year by the legislature. The goal here that we have, first let me back up. This is the Racial Identity Profiling Act. And in the bill, as passed, it sets out a number of milestones to be hit over the next few years as far as racial and identity profiling. In that, the first piece is the Attorney General is responsible for setting regulations by January 1, 2017. To implement regulations at various departments, police or law enforcement departments of varying sizes, it cascades over the next few years. And so they have to implement in a time frame. With that, what the request and what the idea behind this section was to include $10 million, which is essentially a starting point to what we would like to say in a nice way is pre-fund the mandate that we know was signed in that bill. It is only a starting point at this point. And what we have been working on, and I will tell you, I've probably had more attorneys review this than I'm comfortable with, no offense, is the language that will hopefully accompany this package that will basically put, instead of a mandate claim for this process for the AB 953, it will specify that there's only one way to garner these costs and move it into a more streamlined process using the local government financing mechanism you see here. Unfortunately, I don't have a consensus that I can give you on that document yet. I promise we have been working very, very hard on it. It has been through many stages of review at this point. I believe to be almost done, but I believe that to be the case last Thursday as well.
And the goal is to avoid having this turn into one of these mandates that we see in this committee that build up and then suddenly 4 years later we have a big bill to pay.
Exactly.
What about, can you comment on the staff notes with respect to the waiver of the right and the alternate language that's being proposed?
So the waiver of filing the mandate claim is both a function of the provisional language and would be a function of the trailer bill language as well. It is the only way that I can find at this point that we've looked at that can allow for one process to be the reimbursement mechanism for issues related to AB 953. If we don't have that waiver language, basically saying you either choose this process or you don't, then there's kind of what would happen is you could presumably claim costs under this program and then go back and claim costs under the mandate as well.
But the intent is to drive action toward this program, not to cap or limit the money received by the local government entity?
Yes, as long as it's applicable to the program. I think as you've heard many times before, occasionally mandate claims get well, one, they take a long time to adjudicate. And so one of the things we wanted to drive, let's start there. We wanted to drive the fact that we want implementation as soon as possible and in concurrence with the statute and the time frame that the legislature laid out and the governor signed. I think the easiest and best way to do that is to ensure local law enforcement that there's a way for them to reimburse their claims as soon and as quickly as possible. This is the first start to that, and as I said, the trailer bill really will build hopefully through that process. So I don't disagree that your point that it's to reimburse costs. I just want to be clear that we're the intent is to reimburse costs in applicability to the Racial Identity Profiling Act. Oftentimes mandate claims have an overhead rate that's built into those that quite frankly, police and sheriff's departments are already operating. And I'm not particularly interested in funding their overhead rate in relation to this. I'm interested in funding the equipment that they need to both report to the Attorney General once the regulations are done and to implement themselves so that they're in full compliance.
And again, I think our concern is not that, but we want to make sure that to the extent costs are incurred in this that are directly related to the implementation of AB 953, that there's no cap or limit on those, the ability to submit those claims to whatever program it is that's in existence to receive them. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I think I understand where you're going, and I will say that maybe on that particular point, although I think we agree on many other things in relation to this, I would disagree that we're trying to essentially set up a process by which is very clear that they can come in that is not the mandate process.
And it's not limited. They can come in with a cost bill, and you'll determine what's paid and what's not paid.
The trailer bill will hopefully kind of nicely lay out the exact things that we expect at this point, with the rationale that going forward, the regulations as set by DOJ next year may force us to come back and rethink that, quite frankly, in front of this committee again.
I got it.
It's all kind of hard without having the regulations sitting in front of us.
Elio?
So I would just comment that the process that the Department of Finance is laying out is not contained within any sort of trailer bill, and that the process being described would actually circumvent the existing mandate process for those local governments that would choose to file for some sort of reimbursement through the Department of Finance. The mandate, moreover, it would not prevent local governments from going through the mandate process as it currently exists. The way the language proposed by the administration reads says that if a local government takes some amount of money from Department of Finance for completing these activities, they cannot go through the traditional mandates process. I would note that I am not clear as to whether or not that's constitutional fundamentally, but more so that local governments that didn't choose to take this money up front from the Department of Finance could still choose to go through the existing mandates process for the requirements in the law as it was enacted. So there's a bit of conflict here in terms of what the administration is saying their intent is with regard to this process and what could actually happen for local governments. And moreover, that the process they're describing is one that would just completely go around the existing mandates process, and our office would certainly be the first to say that there are issues with the existing mandates process, but that circumventing it may not be on a case-by-case basis is likely not the best course of action.
Well, what I'm not sure of, you all may know, is the Constitution requires us to reimburse local governments, cities and counties for things that we impose, I believe. But does it actually specify a process, or is that a statutory process?
It's a statutory process.
So the trailer bill,
Yeah.
as a statute, can change the statutory process for claims process as long as we pay for things that we demand.
Boy, it sounds like you're a lawyer, sir.
Well, no, no. That's why I'm asking. I don't know. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, and so to build off what the LAO said, to go back to my first part, unfortunately, we haven't released a trailer bill that goes along with this for many reasons, but we're working as hard as we can to get it out there. And that would build exactly kind of your understanding of the process, which would be just that. And I don't like the word circumventing. I like the word that this is a specific process for a specific act that has required law enforcement to do a lot more in relation to stop data than most departments have ever recovered before. There's always a few, right, who have a different process and do their own thing. But by and large, you're talking about 600 to 750 law enforcement agencies across the state that in the next 5 years are going to have to comply with this law. It is not going to be a small undertaking for many of them to figure out how to gather the data and comply.
Right, and I just want to make sure that we fully reimburse for costs that are actually incurred. It sounds like this may not be ripe for a vote yet. Should we not just hold it open until you get your language together?
That would be great. I would appreciate that. And I, like I said, I literally was emailing on it as I was up here on the dais at the very time earlier.
I'm not being critical. I just want to make sure we vote at the right time. So why don't we just hold issue number 1? Any public comment on this one? Colleagues, any further questions? Okay. Yes, Senator Glazer.
With all the focus on the language, I just wanted to ask a question on the amounts. So given the uncertainty that's out there, how confident are you in the $10 million number?
I will be the first to tell you that 10 million is only a starting point, Senator.
Is there any examples in past mandates that give you confidence that it should be a different number?
No, unfortunately, and without the regulations having been written yet, which are very comprehensive in what in the data that will need to be gathered, we don't really have a metric or a rubric to start to make that estimate.
Nothing in any of the mandates of state government on law enforcement over the centuries or the decades gives you any sense of what this
Well, I will
range
tell
should
you,
be?
as I think you could hear from both the LAO and the other members of finance that handle the Commission on State Mandates, many of those are very tough to parse out very good estimates into the future
We've
from.
been doing this a long time, haven't we?
Well, no, we have not been gathering stop data at this level a long time.
Not stop
And-
data,
and-
but
and so, I mean,
obligations to local governments and law enforcement.
well, but they've been very, very, very different mandates. I mean, this is so one of the things in this mandate that is highly likely for most of the departments is creating an information technology system, at least at a local level, that will tie into the Attorney General system, which is also yet to be created, to allow for the transmission of data across that. So, I mean, most, not all, but most law enforcement mandates in the past have been, quite frankly, things like CPR mass. And therefore you have mouth-to-mouth, and there's a bridge in mouth-to-mouth. So it's not, it would be very, very difficult to quantify, one, without the regulations, and two, without, based on a past mandate.
Okay, well, it always surprises me that even though there's a comprehensiveness in terms of the jurisdictions, the information that's being asked for seems to fit into the category of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I guess that creates a complexity that I don't at least fully understand. But I do appreciate that we are setting aside some amounts, because I think that's the right thing to do in terms of prudent budgeting, and I wish we had a better handle on the range so we could be the appropriate amount, but I appreciate the good work that's being done to figure it out.
Okay, we'll hold issue 1 open. Let's turn to issue number 2. Thank you all very much. Community-based transitional housing program. Both budget bill language and trailer bill language. Welcome back. Who's,
I shall. Dirk Simmons, Department of Finance.
thank you, Mr.
The budget proposes $25 million for the establishment of the community-based transitional housing program. As we spoke to you before, mentioned to you before, the program provides transitional housing for ex-offenders in tandem with support services, job training, and counseling. The facility is required to provide transitional housing for a period of not less than 10 years. Eligibility to participate in the program is limited to cities and counties. Applications will be accepted beginning October 1st, 2016, and no later than October 1st, 2018. Finance will review the applications, and the grants will be awarded based on the strength of the application. So at this time, I'd be glad to take any questions.
LAO, any comment?
We would note that this is a significant improvement from January in terms of the specificity and the types of programs that would be eligible for the funding described. Our one recommendation would be to remove the minimum grant amount, as the language does not specify a minimum number of beds for these programs to serve. So a program could be granted 500, or a city and a program could be granted $500,000 for having 10 beds. In comparison, a program with 100 or 50 beds could, at the maximum, only be granted $2 million. So just proportionally, not to set a minimum grant amount such that there could be more equity in terms of what local governments are awarded.
Finance? Any concerns with that?
We prefer the model we have right now because it's going to generate economies of scale. And it's also going to incentivize bidders to provide a more thorough and well thought out proposal, because if you're going to be asking, for example, you want to do $2 million, you're going to say, well, I could maybe do 100 offenders, maybe I should try and serve 200 instead. That way I have a better chance of getting my application approved through the review process. So it's really going to incentivize people, we think, by not having that cap, to put more thought in their proposal to try and serve more people.
Well, the point was the minimum, 500,000. You get 500,000 for doing 10 beds or 110.
It's going to work the same way, we think, where you have $500,000. If you don't turn in an application for 10 beds, well, that might not go over very well. So we think they're going to be incentivized to try and serve more people than that $500,000 cap.
I think our counter would simply be that local governments will likely come forward with the most competitive application that they can possibly muster, knowing that they may be awarded no monies because their application is not as good as other grant applicants. And therefore, there's no need to have a minimum. I think we believe setting a maximum has merit such that one or two cities aren't granted the full amount, but that there's no real need to have a minimum grant award.
Well, the staff recommendation on this is to approve the placeholder trailer bill language, removing the minimum grant requirement, and of course, the budget bill language. Colleagues, questions?
Sorry.
Any questions?
I just have a quick,
And when?
we heard that there's a potential language placed in here that could be a local tax. We haven't been able to verify that.
Oh, no, we envision no local tax or mandate impact with this bill at all. With this proposal, it's just a grant for if the governing board, the Board of Supervisors of the City Council elects to submit an application and grant the conditional use permit for the facility, then they'll receive these grant monies from the state. There's no obligation for them other than as part of agreeing to submit the application. Upon agreeing to receive the funds, they have to agree to maintain in place existing conditional use permits for similar facilities for a specified period of time, because we don't want them taking money for one type of facility through this process and then shutting down other ones. So there is a commitment they will have to make to maintain existing conditional use permits for these types of facilities, but they can obviate having to do that by choosing not to participate. So it's totally optional on their part.
Perfect. Thank you.
Senator Glazer.
Well, I would note that we had a very interesting conversation yesterday about some of the requirements we were considering putting in our budget regarding development and local control, or taking away local control. And I just want to compliment the administration for this type of an approach, with the carrot being offered rather than the state knows better and you don't have the right to say yes or no option. I certainly think this is the better way to go, and I applaud their creativity, and I'm supportive of what's being done.
Thank you, Senator.
Any public comment?
Mr. Chair, members, Jolene Voris on behalf of the Urban Counties of California, also here on behalf of the California State Association of Counties in Support. We have been involved in the stakeholder process. We think this does provide a great incentive to local governments to permit these hard-to-site facilities. And I think in combination with other proposals that are out there, whether it's the homelessness investment that the governor has endorsed, or other proposals, we believe this will go a long way to help serving our community with whether it's mental health beds, behavioral health beds. Regarding the minimum and the maximum, I think the idea we discussed in stakeholder meetings was the idea that the 120 or a cap on it would ensure that we wouldn't create huge facilities, and it was more intended for smaller facilities around the state. So just want to urge your support for this and appreciate the committee's support for this important investment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment? Colleagues, you know the staff recommendation. Is there a move? It's been moved. Please call the roll.
Roth.
Aye.
Glazer. Wynn. Pan.
Aye. Our final item on the agenda is Item 8885, Commission on State Mandates, Issue 1, Reasonable Reimbursement Methodology for Mandate Claims, trailer bill language. This is an item that has come before us before. Ladies, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Danielle Brandon, Department of Finance.
Mary Halterman, Department of Finance.
Carolyn Chu, LAO.
Thank you for staying. Okay, who wants to present?
I will.
My understanding is there were a few adjustments to this.
There was, sorry. So the governor's budget proposed trailer bill language required that a reasonable reimbursement methodology, or RRM, based wholly or partly on claim cost data be developed with claim costs that have been audited by the State Controller's Office. The May revision proposal clarifies that the State Controller shall audit a representative sample of the claim cost data used to develop the RRM. This revised proposal would ensure the RRMs based on claim cost data are based on the most accurate information available and are reflective of the actual cost of a mandate. The administration's proposal would not affect established RRMs or RRMs developed using other allowable methods of developing an RRM. We concur with the staff's recommendation to approve the proposed trailer bill language as revised, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
The audit process itself, will that add to the timeline to any significant degree?
The proposed language recommends 360 days. It might lengthen, but we think that that's a good trade-off to make sure that we have the most accurate information. And claimants can continue to claim costs during that period, so they would not lose out in that fact.
We certainly see that in this committee as these mandates just pile on. LAO?
We have a concern with the adjustment made by the administration because what the administration requires is that the RRM ultimately be based on only those claims that were audited. So let's say that there is an RRM brought forward from the League of Cities, just I'm making up an example, and they use cost data from 100 cities to develop their RRM. And they say on average, it costs cities $5 to produce this widget. And that's their RRM proposal. Under the governor's revised language, the SCO would take a representative sample with no definition of that 100 and do an audit of however many claims, let's say 20 cities' claims. Then they would, based on the adjusted claims from those cities, if there were any adjustments, develop a new RRM to propose to the Commission on State Mandates. The Commission on State Mandates is required or may only approve an RRM if it is reflective of all local government's costs for the particular mandate. So if the Commission on State Mandates were to determine that basing an RRM on 20 cities' costs is not sufficient to determine what all cities might face in terms of costs, they will deny the RRM. So in our view, our concern is that limiting the pool of claims so significantly, potentially, for an RRM would result in fewer RRMs approved by the Commission.
Senator Pan is my statistics expert, but I assume that there's some representative sample that would be commonly accepted.
Yes, the issue becomes that in theory, any RRM proposed by, in my example, the League of Cities would be a representative sample to begin with. To then take a representative sample of that sample would require the first sample, in most cases, to be quite large in order for there to be enough power in the second sample such that it would end up being reflective of all cities, if we wanted it to be statistically accurate. Now, not all RRMs are typically reviewed on their representative sampling from a statistical perspective, but typically the Commission reviews the types of claims included, the size of the local government, the geographical location, that sort of thing.
Colleagues, questions?
So I'm just trying to get at the LAO's concern. So is your concern that the audit would just be too burdensome, or that the methodology would not be appropriately reflective?
Our concern is that the methodology would not be appropriately reflective such that the commission would not ultimately approve the RRM proposal.
And so, okay, so your concern is that the methodology would not actually reflect a representative sample.
Correct, of local governments.
And that's because, I mean,
Oh, because that typically when you have an RRM, the number of local governments included in the sample for the RRM is reasonably large, 10% of local governments, let's say. In some, it varies by
Right.
RRM.
right, and you can do stratified sampling. And
Yeah, and
other
it'll vary,
approaches, right.
sure. And it'll
Right.
vary based on the mandate discussed, right? There are only 58 counties, so taking a sample of counties can't be that large in the first place. But from the commission does not review the sampling technique typically from a statistical perspective. They simply review whether or not the local governments included in the sample are overall reflective of all the local governments affected by the mandate. And our concern is that by narrowing the pool of claims that would be in any RRM proposal, the commission would not find it to be sufficiently reflective of all local governments faced with the mandate costs.
Okay, so you're saying that the commission itself would not find the RRM to be appropriate?
If it did not use claims from enough local governments to be representative of the costs of all claims from
Okay,
local governments.
okay. I admit, now that's sounding a little circular, because if you do a representative sample, by definition, if it's representative, it has to be sufficiently large to represent the whole.
Right, sure. So exactly. So the first, in order to submit an RRM, it needs to be a representative sample of claims.
Right,
Right. So step one, representative sample of claims.
right,
What the administration is proposing is step two, to take a
Yes.
sample of the sample.
Right.
And only audit those and base the ultimate RRM on only the sample of claims. So go from 100 cities to 20 cities and then base their cost estimate for the RRM only on those 20
Okay,
cities.
so I guess we have the administration here, so I see what you're saying. Now, maybe I misread it, but anyway, my understanding is the purpose of the audit is to ensure that the original sample, so we have however many cities, we do a representative sample, X number of cities, we audit Y, a subset of X, to evaluate the accuracy of X, right?
Yes.
But when
That
we
is
just-
not what they're proposing, though.
Okay, so is that true? I mean, I'm not saying, but is that also the administration, is that your intent is that you base it on Y, not, which is the subsample that you audited, not the X?
I believe that's language written because we would want to use the actual costs from the audit. And I would also just like to specify that during this process, the SCO would have to justify their sampling methodology as well.
Okay, so so I would have to concur with the LAO that what you want to do is that you want to base it on X. All right, so total pool. Sorry, I'm using X. I'm just this guy, I guess. So what happens is you have a total pool, you do a representative sample, right? And if you're concerned that the representative sample is somehow jiggered in a way that they pull out, well, one way you check is you want to be sure it's a representative sample. So that itself, to be sure that it's actually truly representative, and then that somehow the things you're looking at, whatever you're looking at, is jiggered. You may want to audit to be sure that the information you're getting is accurate, right? So what happens when you're looking at X, whatever you're measuring, the mandate, that the people, when they said, well, in that sample, when they said it's going to cost this much, that they're being accurate. They're not fudging, making it too large, whatever, And so that's a way to evaluate that. But the thing is that if it turns out that you look at your audit and you go, okay, it doesn't look like they're inflating the way they do it. Now, you could audit all of X, but that's more expensive and more burdensome. But if you did Y, a subset, and you said that sample is okay, then you should go back and say, let's use X to decide what the RRM is. If you're not satisfied Y, and so Y can be different sizes too. But I'm hoping that that's really a test of the accuracy of the claims that you're looking at within X, but X should still be the basis of which you're going to decide the ultimate RM strategy. If you find there's a lot of problems in your Y sample, there's a lot of inflated claims, you could either reject the thing or actually start doing more, make Y even larger, up to the point where it actually totally reflects X if you think there's that much inflation going on, all right? But I think that we're trying to find a way to make it less burdensome. But it doesn't make sense to then say, we're actually going to base the entire RM on Y, which is the subset of the subset. I mean, that's the reason you did X was in order to actually get the accurate representation, the first subset. Is that so? I hope that that's what we should be doing.
This is why I went to law
makes sense.
school. Let's, we have,
a follow-up question, just briefly.
yes, please do.
Well, because the administration's asking for this. They're asking for this change, right? And so it must be based on what they see a problem, right? And that we need to overcome with this complexity and potentially statistically valid or invalid methodology, right? So I just want to be clear, where's the problem that the administration sees? Because I haven't heard that, and maybe it came up earlier.
Certainly. I believe previous statements at a previous hearing, the problem is that there are a high percentage of question costs through the SCO's audit process. Anywhere, it looks like from 45 to 75% of the audit.
Is that right? And has that been a presentation to this committee or another committee in the Senate? So it's just, I'm just the new kid asking the naive
This was
questions.
heard earlier this year. I think you were probably,
Lucky enough to have missed it. I don't know.
so part of the problem
All right, well, then
here
I'll
is,
accept that as we have a problem.
Budget Subcommittee 1 approved the language with respect to the education mandates. We need to work out some language issues here, I think, to accommodate Senator Pan's concern and LAO's concern. So I guess what we do at this point is we approve placeholder language, move this along, and then ask the administration to work with LAO, and they can brief staff and Dr. Pan on the outcome. Does that work? So I think we need a motion to approve placeholder language too. Any public comment? Okay, seeing none, it's been moved. Please call the roll.
Roth?
Aye.
Glazer? Wynn? Pan?
Aye.
Thank you all. You'll work on that. I don't know that I'll ever understand it, but that's okay. X and Y, that's what I got. We have any,
We have one vote on 8880.
let's open the roll on Part B for Senator Glazer.
The issue is establishing a Department of Fiscal. Chair voting aye. All voting aye. Glazer. That's it.
That concludes our session. We are adjourned.